tips for playing up high. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Megan. I'm a violinist and teacher. I've been playing the violin for over 20 years. I have my bachelor's and master's degrees in violin performance, and I'm Suzuki trained. If you're enjoying my videos, please make sure you're subscribed to my channel. It really helps me out. And if you're interested in working with me, you can check the description for a private lesson application, as well as Learn Violin Online, or LVO for short. LVO is a comprehensive learning program for students of all ability levels, beginner to advanced, where skills are introduced, practiced through exercises, and then applied through fun and eclectic pieces. We also have exciting monthly challenges to keep you on track with practice, and you get unlimited feedback from me. It's super affordable, it's super flexible, and super effective. You can click the link in the description to find out more. If you're watching this video, congratulations. You have leveled up. You are no longer a beginner violinist. You are at least intermediate. Congratulations. So when you're starting to play up high on the violin, and when I say up high, I mean fifth position and beyond, this can create some unique challenges. First of all, it can be extremely difficult to read the notes. Obviously, the violin is a very high-pitched instrument. I think it's really only second to flute and piccolo, like those are higher pitched, which means we play a lot of really high notes on the E string, which have a lot of ledger lines. So if you're struggling to read these notes, that is completely normal. Ideally, eventually, you are just going to have to memorize them, just like you've done with the notes in first position, second position, etc. You see a note, you know what it is because you memorized it, and eventually you will do the same with these. However, a few tips. One, if you really need to, you can write in the note names. I remember doing this in high school. If at all possible, try to avoid writing note names over every single note because that can get a little confusing. But let's say you have like a particularly high jump or a particularly high note and you need to write like D or A or whatever underneath it, then go ahead and do it. And what really helped me is identifying what notes are line notes and what notes are space notes. So starting from fifth position, your line notes are going to be C, E, G, B, right? So if you see a line note, then you know that it's one of those notes, and that automatically eliminates half of the possibilities, right? So it definitely increases your chances of playing the note correctly. And then same thing with the space notes. So the space notes are like D, F, A, C. Yes, there is more. Yes, you can technically go higher than that, but it is pretty rare. So eventually you'll memorize every single note, but if you need to write the notes in, and if you need to determine line note from space note and then make your best guess from there, those are two great places to start. Now, when it comes to actually playing the notes, our hand position drastically changes. So let's first start with the placement of the thumb. So up until fifth position, your thumb is basically in the same spot. It's kind of on the side of the scroll right there. However, when you are in fifth position and beyond, your thumb is going to come underneath the instrument and into this little crook right here. You do not want it to be here, okay? You do not want it to be here. You want it to be right there. Generally, that's where your thumb should stay. Obviously, if you go a little bit higher, the thumb can come around a little bit more, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily stay completely hooked on there, but it can come a little bit more around, something like that. But as you can see, I'm still like hooked on here a teensy bit, and I'm reaching all the way over the fingerboard. So you should be able to reach. If you have particularly short hands, you can experiment with the thumb coming up even more right there on the side of the fingerboard. However, I personally don't love that just because it is less supportive. With the thumb placement, the elbow placement also changes. So the higher you go, the more in or the more towards your body your elbow is going to have to come. The same thing if you're going down the string. So if I'm playing very high up on the G string, your elbow is going to be very close to your body and very turned around. Okay, so here's G, here's E, I go back to first. So as I'm going up, elbow comes in, and as I'm going over, it goes around. Looks a little funny. And then your finger shape, your hand shape also changes. So up until fifth position, your fingers have pretty much been facing towards you. Your fingernails have pretty much been facing towards you. But then in fifth and beyond, your fingernails kind of switch, so they are facing more backwards rather than forwards. Also, you want to make sure that you're coming over the instrument enough. you should be touching the instrument on the base of your palm. Not here. It's going to be really, really hard to reach those high notes, but here. So this is a good ideal position for your hand and for your thumb when playing up high. Now, when it comes to the pitch of the notes, whew, that's a whole different beast. So first of all, it can be really hard to hear the pitches when you're playing up high. They sound very different, than they do in the lower octaves. So if you're having trouble hearing the high pitches, here's a few things you can do. One, you can play the notes in a lower octave, right? So you can play them in first position and then try to match the pitch when you go up high. Two, you can practice with your tuner. So you can put your tuner on your stand, and then that way it will tell you what pitch you're playing and if you're in tune or not. Three, you can use a drone. So if there's a particular note that you keep playing out of tune, you can drone that note, and then when you get to it, you can see if you're matching, if you're in tune. Four, if you have a little bit of piano skills, you can play the passage in that same register, in the high register on the piano, so you can hear what it sounds like. And bonus points if you can record yourself playing it like that, and then you can play along to that piano recording on your violin. Also, obviously, as we go up the instrument, the notes get closer and closer together. So you really need to make sure your fingers are on the tips. And a lot of times, if you're playing a half step, it's going to almost feel like the fingers are on top of each other. And you may even find at times that it's impossible to keep both fingers down. So you might have to lift one in order for both notes to be in tune. Now, when it comes to not sounding screechy, first, the higher you go up on the instrument, the closer your bow needs to be to the bridge. Obviously, the higher you go, the shorter you're making the string, so you need to move your bow as close to the bridge as you can. You also do not need to put as much pressure, as much weight into the bow as you do back down in first position. Again, because the string is so much shorter, you don't need all that weight, so be lighter on the bow. Third, it is natural to have a little bit of feedback. So if you're noticing when you're playing up high and you're hearing a little bit of feedback, a little bit of white noise, that is totally normal and generally cannot be heard to the audience. What I like to have my students do sometimes if they're feeling really uncomfortable with how the high notes sound is just to pick a note, a random note, and just hang out there. Play around with placement. Go closer to the bridge, go farther, play around with pressure, harder, lighter, bow speed, faster, slower, until you find the sound that works for you, your bow, and your instrument, obviously. Finally, be patient with yourself. It is a whole new world, and I totally understand with getting frustrated. But hey, if you remember when you first started this journey and how hard everything was back then, you've accomplished so much. There's no reason why this won't be the same. So now you know some tips for reading high notes, how your hands and arms should look when you are playing in the high registers, how to work on your intonation in the high registers, and how to sound great with your bow in the high registers. Did I miss anything? What questions do you have about playing up high? Thank you so much for watching, and please make sure you subscribe before you go.